The first thing she took was the photo from the hallway wall. Not her clothes. Not her favorite mug. Not even the drawer full of overpriced skincare products she always told me not to touch. No. She walked in, went straight to that one picture. Our wedding photo, framed in maple wood, and pulled it down without saying a word. I watched from the kitchen. She didn't know I was there. I hadn't even meant to come home that early. She stared at the frame for maybe 10 seconds. Long enough to smirk. Then she tossed it on the floor face down and walked out. Like it was nothing. That was the moment I knew she'd been gone long before she ever said it. You want to hear something pathetic? I picked up the frame, dusted it off, and hung it back up. I don't know why. Habit, maybe. Or some stupid hope that if I left it there, things might return to the way they used to be. As if furniture has memory. As if walls can forgive. That night, I didn't call her. Didn't text. Didn't even ask where she was going. I just sat on the couch, lights off, replaying every stupid moment from the last 3 months. The late-night strategy meetings. The 3-hour showers when she came home from yoga. The way she used to hum while making tea, and then suddenly didn't. I saw it all now, and it made me feel like the dumbest man alive. You ever convince yourself you're overreacting, just to avoid the truth staring you in the face? That was me. For months. But when she came back the next morning and found the frame rehung, she froze. Not because of the photo. No, she didn't care about that anymore. But because of the silence. No angry texts. No begging. No confrontation. I didn't even look at her. That silence. It scared her more than any fight ever could. She wasn't ready for the version of me that finally just let go. And what she did next to regain control. That's when things spiraled. I didn't go to work the next day. I didn't go anywhere. I sat in that apartment, in the middle of the mess she'd left, her half-empty smoothie cup on the nightstand, the pair of boots she always meant to return, and that stupid, overpriced candle burning low on the windowsill like nothing had changed. And maybe nothing had changed. Maybe I was just finally waking up to what had been true for months. She'd left me long before she said the words. I didn't tell anyone. Not my brother, not my coworkers, not even my best friend who had quietly hinted something was off between me and her during our last dinner together. I just disappeared into the silence. I turned off my phone, unplugged the Wi-Fi, and let the world forget me for a minute. It felt peaceful, in a sick, gut-wrenching way. And then it started. She texted first. Just one word. Really? I ignored it. 2 hours later. You're being immature. Ignored. That night. You hung the picture back up. That's messed up, Mason. Still nothing. She didn't understand. For years, she had the emotional upper hand. Dana was fire and charm and chaos all wrapped in perfume and sarcasm. I was always the one apologizing, even when I didn't understand what I'd done. I was the one cooking dinner to fix an argument. The one showing up at her work with flowers because she'd gone cold the night before. The one holding my breath in conversations, afraid one wrong word would spark an explosion. But now, I said nothing, and nothing echoed louder than any fight we'd ever had. I could feel her panic growing in the digital dust she kept sending me. By day 3, the texts got longer. So what? You're just gone now? After everything? That's it. Are you even going to explain why you're acting like a child? You knew this was coming. That last part, you knew this was coming, nearly broke me. Because yeah, I did. I knew when she started getting dressed up for coffee with colleagues. I knew when she came home and showered before hugging me. I knew when she started sleeping with her phone under her pillow. But knowing something is wrong doesn't make it hurt less when the knife actually goes in. Still, I stayed silent. I moved through that week like a ghost. I sold my gaming setup, packed a duffel bag, and booked a 3-week rental out in the hills where no one would find me. I needed space to think, to breathe, to stop being the guy who always waits for permission to hurt. The day I left, I dropped one thing into the empty frame on the wall, a printed photo of her, laughing, carefree, in the early days. I wrote one word across it in marker, goodbye. I didn't leave a note. I didn't slam the door. I just vanished. And the thing about silence is, the longer it stretches, the heavier it gets. And Dana? She was about to choke on it. Because the woman who always wanted space was about to find out what true distance felt like. I didn't think she'd come looking for me so quickly. I figured Dana would enjoy the freedom, at least for a little while. I thought she'd stretch out in the space I left behind, throw a few parties, maybe even invite him over, the guy I was too afraid to ask about, The one she swore was just a minter, even though she changed the subject every time I mentioned his name. I thought she'd lean into the new single life she seemed so ready for. But I was wrong. I'd been up in the hills for barely 4 days. No social media, no email, nothing. Just a small cabin I rented through some sketchy site, a grocery delivery once a week, and silence. Real silence. Not the kind you get when someone's mad at you. The kind you get when no one knows where you are. When no one expects to hear from you. It was terrifying and freeing all at once. Then one night, around midnight, I saw headlights creeping up the gravel road outside the cabin. I froze. No one should have known I was there. I hadn't told a soul. But when the car parked and I heard the door slam, I knew. Dana. I stayed inside. Watched from the window. She knocked on the door once, then again, then started shouting. Mason, open the damn door. I didn't move. You don't get to do this to me. I said we were done, not that you could just vanish. I should have felt smug. Vindicated. But all I felt was tired. Like my bones were made of wet cement. I leaned against the kitchen counter, heartbeat steady, and didn't make a sound. She screamed some more. Threatened to call the police. Said I was scaring her. But she left after 20 minutes. And I knew the game had shifted. Because suddenly, I was the one in control. The guy she thought would fall apart had evaporated into the quiet. And that silence, it wasn't weakness. It was power. The next day, she sent a voicemail. Her voice trembled. I must have played it 20 times. Mason, please. I don't know what you're doing or where you are, but this isn't like you. This isn't who you are. We had a life together, okay? Even if it wasn't perfect. Can you just say something? Anything. I almost responded. My thumb hovered over the call button. But then I remembered the way she looked at me when she said, "We're done." Like I was furniture she didn't need anymore. Like she'd already packed me up in her head and put me out with the trash. That memory kept me quiet. Over the next week, the messages kept coming. Some angry, some desperate. One of them sounded like she'd been crying, but I didn't trust it. I'd seen her fake tears before. Once, she even bragged about how easy it was to get out of parking tickets that way. She started contacting my friends. My cousin Drew texted me, asking if I was okay. Said Dana called him in tears, saying she couldn't reach me and was scared. I told him I was fine, but asked him not to say where I was. He said okay, but I could tell he thought I was losing it. Maybe I was. But I had to see how far she'd go. Because for the first time in years, she didn't have my attention. And that was driving her absolutely insane. I thought I was prepared for the fallout, but nothing prepared me for what she did next. About 2 weeks into my silence, I got an email from an address I didn't recognize. The subject line just said, "Thought you should know." I almost deleted it, but something told me to open it, and I did. There was no message in the body. Just 3 attachments. 3 screenshots. The first was a text conversation between Dana and a man named Curtis. I'd never heard the name before, but as I read the messages, my stomach dropped. The texts were recent, from just a few days ago. The tone? Casual. Flirty. Like they hadn't just shared something. They were planning the next time. The second screenshot was worse. It was a photo of the two of them. Not a party pic. Not some group hangout. This was private. Personal. She was in his lap, holding his face like she used to hold mine. And the date stamp was from last month. Before she told me we were done. Before I walked out. The third screenshot? It was a group chat. Her and 2 of her friends. Names I recognized. Ellie and Marcia. And in the middle of it was Dana bragging. Not apologizing. Not regretting. Bragging. He's too soft to ever leave. I could cheat in front of him, and he'd still ask if I needed anything. Honestly, I'm tired of carrying him. He's nice, but nice is boring. Curtis makes me feel something. Mason makes me dinner. My hands were shaking so hard I dropped my phone. This wasn't just about cheating. This wasn't just about walking away. This was betrayal with a smile. Disrespect with receipts. This was her knowing exactly who I was, and using that against me. And I wanted to scream. I wanted to punch a wall. I wanted to storm back to our place and confront her, make her see me, hear me, hurt like I was hurting. But I didn't. Instead, I stood there in the middle of that empty cabin and finally understood the depth of the silence I created. This wasn't a passive silence anymore. This wasn't about retreating. This was war. So I leaned into it. I didn't respond to the email. I saved the screenshots. I filed for a change of address. I moved my remaining accounts into a legal trust. I hired a lawyer, not to sue her, not yet, but to start drawing the lines I knew she'd try to cross. And sure enough, 2 days later, I got an alert on my old shared account. Dana tried to access my health insurance. The message from the provider said the request had been flagged because she couldn't verify the marriage status. Marriage status. We were still legally married, but only because I hadn't taken the time to end it. She had no clue how close I was to doing exactly that. And the best part? I hadn't told her a single thing. No arguments. No rage. No explanations. Just the deep, paralyzing silence of someone who finally stopped playing the fool. She wanted freedom. Now she had it. But what Dana was about to learn, the hard way, is that freedom without control can feel a lot like drowning. And the more she flailed, the quieter I got. It was almost surreal watching her unravel from a distance. 3 weeks ago, I was the one pacing the floor, questioning my worth, doubting every breath I took, because the woman I loved made me feel like a burden she had to drag through life. Now, she was the one spiraling, loudly, publicly, and carelessly. I hadn't responded to a single message. Not a call, not a text, not even the voice notes she started sending at 2 or 3 a.m. The ones where she'd start crying mid-sentence and then suddenly switch to yelling, blaming me for abandoning her. She had no idea I had already seen the screenshots. No clue I knew everything. And the best part? She was starting to suspect it. I got the first hint when Marcia, the same friend from the group chat who laughed about me being boring, reached out. Her message was short, but telling. Hey, I think we need to talk. Something got out, and I think Dana's losing it. I didn't reply. Within 48 hours, Dana deleted her social media. Completely wiped. The Instagram, with all our vacation photos gone. The Twitter account she used to retweet art stuff and vague quotes about reinvention was suddenly just dead. And then Drew, my cousin, forwarded me a post he found on Reddit. From a throwaway account. It was a woman venting about how her husband disappeared without warning after she ended things, and how now she wasn't sure if he'd found out about her mistake. She didn't name me, but the details were too specific to be anyone else. The tone of the post wasn't guilt, it was panic. Because Dana wasn't used to being ignored. She was used to emotional cleanup. She expected mess, not silence. When she ended things, she wanted to be the victim. She wanted her friends to rally behind her. Say he was too clingy, he never matched your energy. You deserve someone exciting. But all she got was nothing. No drama. No rebuttal. No version of events to argue against. Just a vacuum. And when you've built your identity around control, a vacuum is terrifying. The last straw came when she showed up at my cousin's house unannounced. Drew called me, whispering like he was hiding in his own home. Dude, she's at my door. Right now. She says she knows you're staying with me. I wasn't, but the fact she was guessing meant she was losing it. She's banging on the door, he whispered. What do you want me to do? I told him to do nothing. Not to lie, not to engage, just let her stand there. Let her confront the echo of her own choices. He said she stood outside for 10 minutes, alternating between knocking and pacing, like she wasn't sure whether to cry or break something. Then, just like that, she got back in her car and left. The next morning, I finally broke the silence. But not with her. I sent a letter. Old school. No return address. Just a photo of that wedding frame she'd ripped off the wall, now replaced with a copy of the group chat she never thought I'd see. One sticky note on top of it. You ended it. I just listened. I never saw her reaction. But I didn't need to. Because the moment she opened that envelope, I knew the silence had finally spoken. And it hit harder than any words ever could. About 5 days after I sent the letter, the tone of everything changed. The messages shifted. No more rage. No more guilt tripping. Instead, she started rewriting history, like if she just said it enough, maybe even I would believe it. Hey, I didn't mean done like done, she wrote. I meant I needed space. You totally overreacted. I read that one at a cafe in a new city, sipping a coffee no one else had ever tasted with me. There was no ache this time, just disbelief. I watched her shrink herself down in text, turning full-blown betrayal into a moment of confusion. Then came the next one. I know you're hurting. I am too. But ghosting me like this isn't fair. Fair. I almost laughed. Fair was me believing her when she said the business trips were real. Fair was me bringing home dinner to a woman who was emotionally checked out long before she ever physically left. But she wasn't done yet. That night, she left a voicemail I played once and never again. It was almost a performance. Soft piano in the background, her voice fragile, cracking in all the right places. She said things like, "We had something rare," and "You meant more to me than you think." She even quoted part of our wedding vows back to me, like that would reverse everything. The desperation wasn't in what she said. It was in how carefully she chose her words. Like she was trying to cast a spell. And maybe that would have worked 6 months ago. But now I was sitting in an apartment with zero reminders of her. I had a new routine, new neighbors, even a part-time job I'd taken just to ground myself. Every morning, I woke up to quiet. Not the kind of silence she feared, the kind I chose. Meanwhile, Dana was unraveling. I knew because Drew told me she showed up at his place again. This time, she wasn't angry. She was pleading. She asked if I'd give her your new address, he said. I told her I didn't have it. I could hear the discomfort in his voice, like even he didn't know whose side he was supposed to be on anymore. She said she made mistakes, that she didn't realize how much you meant to her until it was too late. Yeah, that tends to happen when the attention vanishes, when the backup plan doesn't come through, when the new guy doesn't stick around once the thrill fades and reality kicks in. But I wasn't bitter anymore. That surprised even me. I thought I'd carry that bitterness forever. But it had quietly evaporated in the time I'd spent rebuilding myself, away from her shadow, away from the noise, away from the version of me that always said, "I'm sorry," first just to keep the peace. The truth was, I didn't want revenge. I didn't need to scream at her. I didn't need to prove anything. She'd already lost something she couldn't get back. Not the marriage, not the comfort, not even me. She lost the version of herself who used to be the center of someone's world. And that absence, that haunted her more than anything I could have said. I should have known she'd find me eventually. Dana always hated not being in control, and silence, true, suffocating silence, was a language she couldn't speak. So when I opened my door that rainy Thursday morning and saw her standing there, soaked, clutching a flimsy umbrella and a leather tote she used to carry to gallery openings, I wasn't even surprised. She didn't speak at first, just looked at me like she was trying to read my face for a trace of the man she used to know, the man she used to manipulate. But that guy had been buried weeks ago. "Can I come in?" she finally asked. I stood still. I could have said no. I should have said no. But a part of me, maybe the last soft, pathetic sliver, wanted to hear what version of the truth she'd brought this time. I stepped aside. She walked in like she belonged, like we hadn't spent the last month on opposite ends of a war she started. She looked around the place. Bare walls, quiet furniture, no framed pictures, and she smiled weakly. "You really disappeared." I didn't answer. I let her fill the space. And she did. She told me Curtis was a mistake. That he got in her head when she was feeling lost. That the things she said in that group chat were just jokes, taken out of context. That she never stopped loving me, even when she said she was done. Her voice broke in all the right places. She cried without smudging her mascara. It was rehearsed. All of it. I watched her the way you watch a familiar movie with someone who's never seen it, knowing every twist, every tear, every lie. When she finally ran out of words, she reached into her tote and pulled out a photo. It was us, at the lake. She had sunglasses on and her head on my shoulder, and I was grinning like a fool. She placed it on the table like it was a trump card. "I miss this," she whispered. "I miss you." And maybe once, those words would have wrecked me. But not anymore. I looked at the photo, then back at her. I asked one question. "Why now?" She blinked, caught off guard. "What do you mean?" "You didn't call when you said it was over. You didn't explain. You didn't care. So why now? Why today?" She hesitated. That pause told me everything. "You didn't answer my messages," she said. "You just disappeared. You scared me." "No," I replied quietly. "You scared yourself. I just stopped playing." She didn't have a response for that. She just sat there, eyes wide, lips trembling, trying to summon the next act. But the theater was closed. "I'm not angry, Dana," I said, standing. "I'm not even hurt anymore. I'm just done." She stood, panicking. "So that's it? After everything we've been through, you're just going to throw it all away?" "No," I said, walking to the door. "You already did. I just finally noticed." And when I opened the door, she didn't move right away. She stared at me like I'd spoken a language she didn't understand. Because in her world, I was supposed to beg, to cry, to ask for another chance. But instead, I was holding the door open and waiting in silence. And in the end, She walked out exactly the way she walked in, without a single word. After she left that morning, I didn't collapse. I didn't sit on the floor and cry. I didn't stare at the door, hoping she'd come back. I just stood there for a while, breathing in the silence she once feared, the very silence that had become my peace. It was strange how final it felt. Not loud or dramatic. Just done. Like a chapter ending not with a scream, but with a single page turning. I spent the rest of the day clearing out the last traces of her. There weren't many. She hadn't been part of this new life long enough to leave fingerprints. The photo she tried to guilt me with, I slid it into the trash without a second glance. That man in the picture wasn't me anymore. He was someone who'd begged to be seen. Someone who waited for scraps of affection. Someone who mistook silence for love and neglect for passion. But I had changed. Slowly, and then all at once. In the months that followed, I kept rebuilding. Not for revenge, not to prove anything to her, but because I'd finally realized I was worth saving. I started working full-time again, picked up my old woodworking hobby, even made a few new friends at the local coffee shop who didn't know anything about my past. It was freeing to talk without explaining the baggage I used to carry like a second skin. And then, unexpectedly, and without warning, I met someone. Her name's Nora. We met at a weekend flea market. She asked me if I was selling or just browsing. I told her I wasn't sure yet. She laughed and said, "That's how the best stories begin." And maybe she was right. Nora isn't loud. She doesn't fill up rooms with energy like Dana did. She fills them with warmth, presence, real conversation. She listens. She notices. When she looks at me, I don't feel like a supporting character. I feel like myself. I told her everything. Not at once, but piece by piece. She didn't flinch. She didn't judge. She just said, "You must have been really strong to survive that, and really brave to walk away." And for the first time, I believed it. Sometimes, I still hear from people who knew Dana. Mutual friends. Old neighbors. I hear she's dating again. That she's back on social media, carefully curating the new version of herself. I don't wish her harm. I don't even feel the sting I used to. Because I didn't win by moving on. I won by finally choosing myself. In the end, she said we were done. So I walked away in silence. And it turns out, that silence became the start of everything I never knew I deserved.